In the year 2020, many governments around the world put out a mandate to churches and other religious groups to shut down or close their doors because of a virus that was circulating around. Well, now just 2 or 3 years later, for most people, we aren't quite as worried about the potential negative effects of gathering together to sing, to pray, to study the Bible, even in homes and certainly in churches. However, the repercussions of those kind of shut down months, or for some churches, shut down years, are still being felt by many people today and many churches today, especially in declining church attendance and church involvement. But from my own perspective, as well as the perspective of several pastors that I know, the church shutdown did not necessarily cause people to leave the church or stop their spiritual disciplines. Not really. Instead, it gave many people that were on the fringes, on the outside, an excuse to leave or become uninvolved. In turn, many churches suffered greatly in that declining attendance, and even some churches fully closed their doors. One study found that less than half of the churches were back to their pre-pandemic attendance and involvement. But again, I would say that the shutdown cannot be blamed for those church closures. If anything, it just expedited or sped up the process that was already in play. As a pastor who has been in the ministry for around 20 years in some kind of leadership, and because of conversations with other pastors, I'll just be honest, I have seen people leave the church fairly regularly. We leave for all kinds of reasons. I've seen teenagers leave as soon as they get their driver's license. I've seen young adults leave as soon as they graduate high school. I've seen adults leave because of a change in work or a hobby. I've seen senior adults leave because of a change in style in the church, or singing style or preaching style. I've seen spouses leave after a divorce. I've seen people of all ages leave for all kinds of things, like a change in carpet or wall color, a change in service time, because of a loss of interest in serving, and countless other reasons. This has been a concern for the American church for many years. And long before my time, there have been conferences and books galore written on the topic of what can we do about people that leave the church. The idea is that the front door is open, but the back door swings just as wide. There's many church gurus that talk about how we can try to fill the gap caused by young adults leading the church, or how we can reach husbands and fathers who have stopped coming or maybe never did, how we can connect with millennials instead of just the baby boomers, and many other topics around this idea of people leaving the church. People leaving the church is an all too common issue that so many pastors and church leaders have to deal with every week. But the reasonings behind someone leaving isn't too mysterious, I don't think. And in fact, I would say there's really 5 reasons why people stop going to church. Number 1, they are out of the habit. Their work schedule changed, they got hurt, they got sick, they had a big life event like a birth in the family or a death in the family. They moved to a different town, and as a result of life change, they missed gathering with their church family for a few weeks, a few months, in some cases, a few years. They got out of the habit of waking up early, of getting the kids dressed, of getting themselves dressed early, of meeting with a small group, of serving in a ministry, and all the rest that comes along with being part of a church. And in the absence of their church attendance habit, they built another habit to replace it, such as sleeping in, such as golfing, watching TV, picking up an extra shift in their work, going to the lake, or whatever it is. Number 2, they are scared to go back. Getting emotionally or physically hurt by other people is an all too common reality for many people in all kinds of settings. At school, or on the bus ride home from school, at a job, at home, or even at the place that should be the safest environment, meaning the church. Some people have their feelings hurt by well-meaning people, while other people were attacked by people with malicious intent. Sometimes the person that hurt them was the pastor or the church leader, and other times it was just somebody else in the church acting out of their own hurt or their own brokenness. But while some of the places we get hurt we have to return to, like school or work, we feel like very often, because church is essentially voluntary, that it's an opportunity that we can stay away because we're scared to go back. And not only that, there are an overwhelmingly large number of options for most people. Because of that, when someone thinks about attending again or is invited by a friend, the pain that they remember feeling and suffering from their past church experience can sometimes be so overwhelming and cause so much fear in the present that they stay away. And this is why having different and fresh expressions of church is so helpful, because sometimes a completely different environment, such as a school or a home church in a neighborhood or in a coffee shop or whatever, a lunchtime Bible study at a restaurant, just different kind of non-religious, maybe looking spaces and uncommon avenues of having churches or Bible studies. Those types of things can be very disarming, and disarming enough and safe enough feeling that someone with pain in their past can kind of come back to being in a church. Number 3, they are upset or bitter. Something happened in someone's past with a church or a Christian which resulted in feelings of bitterness that either they're unable to deal with because they don't know how, or they're unwilling to deal with it. But in contrast to the second reason of them being scared to come back, often people are bitter not because someone hurt them necessarily, but sometimes it is because something just simply didn't go their way. Something was inconvenient for them. And I would say this is the most stereotypical reason why people stop going to church, especially in the South. And it seems to often be related to insignificant changes in the church style or color or seating or service time or many of those other things, again, that are stereotypical. This may also be the hardest reason to overcome, because someone's opinions and bitterness can become so tied to who they are and how they live. Well, number 4 reason why so many people stop going to church is that they are embarrassed. Often someone does something wrong or sinful, and it results in feelings of shame and regret and embarrassment and guilt in their life that really just kind of builds up a barrier between them and Christians and the church. And the difficulty of dealing with this reason is that although so many Christians in churches, and certainly God himself, have open arms, willing and ready to receive them back and forgive them, very often someone can become so stuck behind that wall of shame that they're not even willing to step out and be received by a church. This reason is also difficult to deal with because many times someone's actions were not actually morally wrong or biblically wrong. They were just unacceptable for that particular church or that particular group or denomination or pastor. For example, someone may stay away from church because they think they'll be judged for their tattoos, for their family's reputation, for their disability, for their particular style, or even lack of church experience. But some churches, sadly, would still not accept them, so they assume that no church will. Number 5 reason why people do not come back to church is it is simply not a priority for them. Life can be described as a game of time. Every one of us have the same amount of time in our day, 24 hours, in the same amount of time in our week, 7 days. What we do with that time is directly connected to our priorities. In reality, church attendance and involvement is simply not a priority in many people's lives, and it is evidenced by their lack of involvement, by the fact that they are not there or they're not part of it. And maybe that's related to some of those other reasons that we just mentioned, like fear. They're out of the habit because of brokenness or bitterness in their life. It could be the result of a motivation that they used to have not being there anymore, like their parents aren't there to tell them to go anymore, or a spouse isn't in their life anymore that really encouraged them to go. Or it certainly could be that they just do not have a relationship with Jesus Christ, meaning the Holy Spirit is not in them, compelling them to go and be a part of a church. So if you have stopped attending church, today is the day to deal with that reason or that excuse, if we were honest, and find your way back. And if you know someone that has stopped attending or stopped being involved, don't give up on inviting them. And even more, don't give up on praying that the Holy Spirit will draw them back in.